Kiwi, and welcome back to a new episode of Hades 1. Today we are going to be taking the aspect of Nemesis for a speedrun. I had a comment on my channel a while back about someone saying that Nemesis was their go-to speedrun weapon, and I want to give it a try. Now, this video was recorded with the intent of having it being a background footage for a rant about Centaur World, an animated series from Netflix that I really have a lot of opinions about. I just happened to end up getting a PB in the process, so enjoy this really good run, even with some bad RNG knocking me away from that sub 10 I was so close to getting. And at the end, there's a extra episode of Isaac, a Binding of Isaac at the end, just with another really good run to pad out for the rest of the commentary. So if you enjoy the commentary, stick around. If you're just here for the Hades run, enjoy that while you get to hear the first half of my Centaur World rant, hopefully with minimal spoilers, but inevitably spoilers ahead. You have been warned. Enjoy. Hi, Kiwi. I am conflicted. I just finished watching a cartoon on Netflix called Centaur World, and you've seen me watching bits and pieces of this, and I feel like I've aptly described it as a fireworks-filled dumpster fire of rainbows and glitter, and I feel like I'm gonna hold to that description, but I am conflicted because I don't feel like I should have enjoyed it. And there are definitely bits of this show that I would say that I did not enjoy. But there are just moments that shine and impressed me, and I mean, I'm recording this. I felt that I needed to talk about it because I don't know how to. I guess I need to kind of like sit and ruminate on these thoughts. I would say the majority of the show, the season finales, that's 2 seasons long, notwithstanding,
not yet.
the show is very focused on just having fast-paced joke after joke, and for me, a lot of those jokes fall flat. I didn't feel like they really stuck their landing, but there are some jokes that got a chuckle out of me. I would say there were few and far between jokes that like genuinely had me like laugh out loud. Well, laughing. I chuckled here or there, but nothing really stuck the landing for me. And I think a big part of that is the main characters of the show I didn't quite care for in a lot of instances. It took me a while to warm up to them, and I will say over time they became a little bit more charming, and I did enjoy the way they were directed a bit more. But the main character, Horse notwithstanding, they all just felt a little superficial, at least early on. And when they're constantly making gags and being like, wow, that's so random, wow, that's so funny kind of gags, it felt like it took away from the potential for character development on them. And don't get me wrong, these characters do get development, and I think that's an important thing to say, and that is why I am so conflicted, because this show has moments that just shine and make me feel like there could have been so much more. The parts of this show that I enjoyed weren't the parts that were trying to be funny. It was the parts that were being serious and thoughtful and developing those characters and their backstories and the interactions that they've had with both each other in this kind of found family situation and what that means for them. And it's like, take an example. I mean, they had running gags that they kind of like referenced throughout the show. I think the biggest one was in the first there's a running gag of what are called Moltar. So this whole show is Centaur World, right? So everything in this world is a centaur, including various species and objects. And so there are Moltars, moles who have centaur body sort of things, kind of. And there is one character named Comfortable Doug, who has like a very bad German accent, but that kind of is his charm. He's monotone, his delivery is kind of like unevenly paced, and it makes it very funny. And I guess he was really popular, maybe, or the writers really liked him, because then he started they have one episode in the 2nd season where they basically parody the fandom, and this one, they're all bird tars basically, and they're just like making fun of the younger generation's propensity for everything has to be social media and influencer and like electronic device communication focused. And he brings up how much, one of these characters just brings up how much he loved Comfortable Doug and wants to see more Comfortable Doug at all times. And then for like the next 2 episodes, Comfortable Doug is there a lot, and he keeps coming back. And they had a good joke with him, and then they just kind of run it into the ground. Although I will say there are moments where he still gets a chuckle out of me, and overall I would still consider him one of my favorite characters, I guess, for comedy. I did find that a lot of what they did with him did get me to laugh, but he also got really overplayed, and that's part of the weakness of the show, I think, is that it sometimes runs a joke into the ground and doesn't know when to let it breathe or let it have some space. But the reason why I bring that up is because
Let's hear it, Father. Which to
there are
choose?
there are moments where you have genuine, like, heartfelt
Go with that.
emotions and, like, genuinely, like, I would say pretty
giving up.
solid writing. It's
Till next time,
weird. It
Topper.
has these moments of, like, very contemplative character interactions. I think the best example in the first season is they have an episode where they're basically indirectly addressing suicide. Characters that give up hope and lose the will to go on. There is a basically whale tar who helps these people find a way out, and they're using her as a metaphor for suicide. She basically eats these people, and they kind of go into this, like, monotone trance-like state where they are just existing, and it's a really weird metaphor, but it kind of worked, and it's one of those powerful moments of we're not alone. You have people that care about you. There's so much in this world that you can still find to love if you just take a moment to separate yourself from those parts in life that are stressful and tearing you apart. And of course that's not easy, but that's why sometimes looking to others when you don't have the strength alone to go on is so important. And it's weird. It has this, like, genuine, like, reach out, ask for help, find people that are there for you. You have people. And then it's also just, like, also the whale tar kind of reflecting on the fact that she thought this was the answer for these people. She was helping these people by helping them run away from their traumas and their griefs, and even she is like, well, I think I'm wrong. And I don't know, it's so weird. It's so weird that this show that goes balls to the wall nonstop comedy all the time, and again, I mean, like, not necessarily comedy that's funny, but things that are clearly intended to, like, get you to laugh. There's constant just moving on to the next gag in this show. And then you have these moments that slow the pace down, focus on the drama, on the characters, and they're so much better. And I think what shows that best of all, I mean, the first episode felt pretty strong to me, honestly. It's the setting of this world. Let me give you a little context. There are two parallel worlds linked together by a rift. Centaur world, full of cartoony magic and nonsense, and a very set in realism, war-torn world with a army of humans fighting against these minotaurs, and, like, armored. I mean, they use the term minotaur very loosely. It's basically humanoid, armored, demonic type creatures of various. I would call them almost more like chimera warriors, less minotaurs. They are any mixture of human with creature, honestly. For some reason, they had an obsession with pangolins, and or, well, I wouldn't call it an obsession, but it seems like there were a lot of pangolins, but I digress. But there's this war-torn world parallel to the crazy, chaotic Centaur world, and the premise of the show is our main character, Horse, gets separated from her human rider. And again, their names are literally Rider and Horse. Everyone else usually has names, or actually, I guess that's not true. The Centaurs have names. The humans are usually their titles, so General and Rider are the only really named humans. There are a couple others that actually do get names, but they're mostly as gags, especially Gary, which I didn't dislike the running gag of Gary, but I'm not going to go into too much about that. I'm just glad that Gary is really good at making cakes. He's also dead in a prison cell in Centaur world, but we're not going to address that too much. His horse, though, I might actually have to bring up because she was fun, but more on Becky Apples in a little bit. I guess the season finale, and I'll try not to do too much into spoiler territory until the end of this kind of, like, thought processing review, so that people can skip it if they don't want to listen to it. But it's just, the season finale of the second season, I think, is hands down the strongest part of the entire show. And like I said, when I was describing what I felt like when I was watching this show, it was mostly I was staring at something that I couldn't tell if I was enjoying or just like I couldn't look away because it was so like it was like a fireworks show. It has no direct impact on me necessarily, but it's still fun to at least watch and kind of see what happened. And the finale of this show in its second season was worth the entire ride there, I would say. It ended on such an incredibly strong finale. And again, without going into too much detail, it's just, it's so frustrating almost that there are episodes that genuinely felt like I didn't want to watch them, or I didn't want to watch parts of them because they're running a gag into the ground and it's either kind of weird and gross and not really that funny and it's just a little uncomfortable. I wouldn't say like anything made me feel like grossed out, but certainly if you're sensitive to like sweaty people or like how birds look when they are like underdeveloped and come out of their eggs, like there are visuals in this show that are kind of gross.
It's just the edge I need.
But none of that really bothered me. It's just like it's weird. It's not really doing much for me. It's just it's there, and I'm gonna continue to watch and accept that it's there whether I want it to be or not. And I don't know. It's just like when this show decides to do drama, it does drama really well. The first episode, I was so actually interested in the plot. They made a very clear connection between Ryder and Horse. You actually like get into it. Has a pretty solid action scene, and that's something that I definitely have to give this show credit for. It has very solid animation throughout. I think it's doing that weird thing that American animation does a lot more than I think Japanese animation does, at least from what I'm used to, where they use CG but make the CG look 2D. Because I mean, when I look at it, I can get that sense of, yeah, this is a 3D model but displayed in an angle and with shading and such that makes it look as 2D as it can. And if you're not like looking for it, I think it does a really good job of masking that CG technology. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an animator, but it felt that way. It looked that way. It's either that or they just did really good jobs of shading to make a 2D image look 3D. Either way, some of those action scenes are just very fluid and impressively animated. And I like, especially in the finale where there's a bunch of fighting against the Minotaurs with the other Centaurs, like it's well done. And also, this show is a musical of all things. Like there are songs throughout the entire 2 seasons. I don't think there's any episode that doesn't have at least one song in it. And I will say, kind of like the comedy, not all the songs hit me that strongly. There were only a couple songs that were like, I want to listen to these again because they hit me in a way. But I still think like sometimes the message of the songs are like, again, it's that, do we want a song about comedy, which I would say is like at least 75% of the singing, or do we want a song about character growth, character development, the effects of trauma and personal grievances and development? Those were fewer and far between, but when they were there, they were strong, they were great. And of course the classic everyone's here at the end, sing together finale that I'm so sensitive to in the effect of, I just love it. I love that everyone's here at the end to fight together and win the day sort of settings. Like I love it when it as overdone as that trope may be, the everyone is here trope always gets me. And it was also fun because, I mean, every character kind of has at least one major song that has kind of a motif that plays around this character when they sing other songs sometimes, especially if it relates to what that growth of the song gave them. And so all of those motifs come to play at the end in that final song in some capacity. But I don't know. I won't comment too much on the music. Again, a lot of it didn't necessarily stand out to me, but there were only a few songs that I outright just didn't want to listen to. Some were rough, but a lot of them were good at minimum, and some were genuinely fantastic. I felt like those fantastic songs I could count on one hand which ones like truly hit the way I hoped they would hit. But like
I'll take it.
again, I want to focus back on the setting a little bit. So the idea is the horse and the rider get separated. Horse falls through a rift because she has like a piece of this relic that somehow connects the worlds. And so the first season is centered around Horse trying to escape Centaur world and return to her more reality world. And in doing so, she encounters a herd of various centaurs, a deer tar, a llama tar, a giraffe tar, and a finch tar, I think. I don't think oh, and a zebra tar. And her herd, for what they're worth, I think overall they're a good supporting cast, but I feel like they needed more character. They needed to focus on the characters a little bit more, rather than focusing on the gags these characters can pull off. But we do get, for reasons I won't go into too much detail, Horse eventually gains some ability to control magic, and she gets backstory magic, which is a very, honestly, kind of funny, a funny way to do the contrivances of flashbacks, but have a canonical reason for it, and I'm okay with that because the flashbacks that we get in that second season are just so meaningful to the overall character development. Now, I'm probably going to wander into a little bit of spoiler territory here, so I want to outright say, if you value, if you're at all interested in the show, I almost want to say watch. If you don't want to slog through everything, I almost feel like you could watch the finale of the second season, and while you'll definitely have things that you don't know, you won't know a bunch of characters, because again, it's the everyone's here to help sort of vibe. You're gonna miss some of the jokes that recur. You're gonna miss the potential additional emotional resonance that hearing a reprise of a previously sung song can give, and you may not have all the context for why these characters have their motivations. But I do almost feel like this single episode, which mind you is like an hour and 20 minutes long, it's basically a movie, is self-contained enough, and the character motivations come through enough that I feel like you could watch just that last episode and still get a meaningful overall experience. So with that said, if you have a passing interest in this but don't want to commit what is it, an 18 episode series, it's 10 episodes of the first season, 8 episodes in the second season, but again, like that finale is basically 3 episodes, so it's really like it's a 20 episode total series, with each episode being in the realm of like 20 to 30 minutes overall. If you have passing interest, just enough to want to like kind of wet your toes and see what it's about, watch the finale. That's my opinion. That may be the wrong opinion, but that's kind of my thought process on it. So let's talk a little bit more about the drama and like the reasons why I'm more conflicted than I want to be about this. Particularly the finale of the second season, like I was alluding to, but let me talk about some character motivations first. So, first off, of our core cast, we have, I mentioned, we basically have a core cast of, I think, about 5 characters. Horse, Llama Wink the Llama Tar, Glendale the Deer Tar, Derpleton the the Giraffe Tar, Zulius the Zebra Tar, and Ched. I'm not going to even try Ched's name because it's a lot of words in a row. It's like Cheddington, Chedworth, Chedbick, Chedboy. I don't know. It's like Ched. It's Ched as the first syllable of a bunch of names afterwards. It's dumb. It's dumb, but it fits the setting from where we first meet him. Anyway, we get the backstory of these characters, and we meet the ones that I really want to talk about are Llama Wink, who is kind of this aggressively overbearing mother figure to the herd. She calls this her herd. And we see in her backstory that she basically survived a war that massacred everyone she knew and loved, except for a single kind of ladybug tour, I think. The point being is you understand her motivations for being this overbearing, protective, motherly figure, because she needs something to protect. She's alone at one point or another, and then she slowly kind of encounters the other members of the herd and sees that they're hurting or they're lost or they need some guidance, and she's like, well, I need that too, and I will find that with you guys. And the reason why she's so overprotective is because, well, yeah, her family got wiped out by this war. And then Glendale's one of the characters that I wish they did a little bit more with, because they made her her running gag is she has a tummy hole, and by that I mean a magic portal to a fifth dimension, kind of Kirby style. She doesn't eat things, she just shoves them into her belly, and she is a kleptomaniac like no other. She steals everything in sight, and it's a running gag through the whole series that she can basically pull anything you could need out of her stomach because she's such a klepto. She usually has something of that nature. She has like fiery bomb arrows, she has Jebri's shirt, which was a major plot point. There's just a random like tree creature named Jebri, who the entire show is just like, I'm so cold, I can't find my jacket, it's been missing for years. And in the final episode, you just find out that the jacket was in Glendale's stomach the whole time, and they make a point of that, which I give them credit. They do tie together a lot of their loose ends very well in that finale, even the sillier ones for whatever reason. But Glendale, I feel like they never really addressed why she is a klepto. They just addressed the fact that she is a klepto. They kind of loosely made it sound like because her stomach is the way it is, it's constantly telling her to take things and take things into her and steal things. But we never really like get down into the why is this, who she is, what she does, why is she like this? It's just she is this way, and that's it. And sometimes characters can be, it's okay to have a linear character arc, like have a character that is the same way from start to end. That's okay, but I long for characters, if they're going to be part of your main cast, to have some sort of growth rather than just a running gag that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Overall, I'd say Glendale's gag is okay. The other character that I have to complain about is Ched, the Finchtar. Like, he just has this running joke, which isn't even a joke, of him just really aggressively hating Horse. Like, he is constantly belittling her and going against her decisions, and just feels kind of mean-spirited. And you definitely get a sense through the series that he is like being, I guess I want to say tsundere. He's like being mean because he likes her, or not like romantically likes her. By the end of the series, we see he's kind of gay for Zulius, but that's a whole another plot point that doesn't really need to be talked about. But he clearly has a thing against Horse, or at least he's acting aggressively towards Horse. And we find out in his backstory that basically he was bullied by horse tours, or horse tars. He wanted to be it's this weird thing that the horse tar people as a whole are just a whole can of worms I don't want to describe. They are they're supposed to make fun of like the flamboyant hoity-toity sort of like, I think, British stereotype kind of people that are like in the like regal attire and such, and they are batshit insane, especially their, I don't know if she's queen or what she is, but I digress. They're an interesting group of people, and he grows up in their kingdom effectively, and kind of gets bullied for his dreams. He's this tiny creature who wants to learn how to it's definitely not jousting, but I'm gonna call it jousting. Wield the lance, do a dance with the lance while dancing around tulips. It's like it's called tulip tapping or tulip dancing or something. And basically people duel by like holding lances and dancing around, frolicking through the tulips. It's silly, but honestly, it's actually an interesting character development for Ched. You see probably the reason why he resents Horse so much is because he was bullied by the horse tars. So the concept of Horse is a constant reminder of the trauma he held from childhood. That said, again, he just nonstop is always berating and belittling Horse, even when you kind of recognize that he's warming up to her, and it always felt kind of off-putting. It never felt like it felt one-dimensional, I guess. Like, it's clearly more than that, but it didn't feel right. The character like that I think I liked the most as far as development goes, I mean, like I said, Wama Wink, the Lamatar, learning to kind of still protect her family, but also learn to communicate and listen to them, or communicate with and listen to and respect their boundaries a little bit. I think that's an important thing that a character arc for her. But I think honestly, Derpleton, I like Derpleton. He's a good boy. He's completely out there. He's the Giraffe Tar. The main reason I bring up Derpleton is because when we learn about his backstory, we kind of got a sense of this in, I think, season 1. There are wish-granting tree shamans, basically. They are trees who are shamans, and they really like to sing old country song type things, like poppy country music. And honestly, I really enjoyed the voices of the tree tars most of all. But that and the main character, the Horse's voice actor, has a phenomenal singing voice, and I found like most of her songs I really enjoyed when they were being the serious story, which most of the time Horse is the straight man in this series. She is the one who's like, this is nonsense, focus, please stop making gags, just make the thing happen that we need to save either my interests or your world, for God's sakes. But I digress. Durpleton is interesting because, well, these wish-granting Treetars give Durpleton's farts the ability to talk, and I know that is gross and silly, and yes, it absolutely is. Like, the gag is not that funny, but the underlying reason for it is kind of onto something. Basically, whenever he, in this episode where this plot line gets developed, because of course it has to develop, he farts and he's like, "I'm sorry, father," and the characters are like, "Are we gonna unpack that at all?" And they don't until season 2, but they do address it later on. But the point is, when he gains the power for talking farts, the farts only compliment him in his father's voice, and it's kind of weird. It's really weird, but it's an extremely weird analogy for like parental verbal abuse and trauma from childhood that Durpleton had to contend with. And we find out in season 2 when we get his backstory. Basically, his parents just were very disinterested in anything Durpleton had to do. Durpleton wanted to create toys. He wanted to interact with his parents. And his parents are like, "We need to read the newspaper. We don't want to listen to you. And if you're going to fart in our presence, well, we are ashamed to be your parents." Like, basically, he has the most unsupportive, uninterested parents. And like, the whole story of Durpleton kind of adopting a son, which is a Minotaur that gets stabbed in the back, is basically dead. He like straps the Minotaur to his body. It's kind of like a snake-headed, human-bodied creature, and he just like carries it around, talking as if it's his son. And it turns out this thing is not dead, but it's basically dead through most of the first part of the second season when they first introduce it. He's just like, "This is my son Stabby. Now don't curse around him. Be friendly. We need to teach him good lessons." And by the end of this show, Stabby does kind of have his moments. It's really, I don't know if I'd call it funny. Again, it's not really necessarily a joke that I find funny, but it is fun to see that Stabby, through the love afforded to him by Durpleton, comes around and ends up joining the herd as one of the main cast, I guess. Sort of. He doesn't have a lot of interactions, but yeah, I take that back. No, he has enough of a presence that he is there. And it's like the lizard is like a 40-something old man in the body of a baby now by the end of it, because for some reason being in Centaur world for too long warps the creatures who come from the world of reality and like makes them more cartoony. By the end of the show, Horse goes from this like very rigid line drawn horse to a more like they used the description of as if two beach balls had a child over and over again to describe Horse after she gets wibbly wobbly, I think is the term they use to describe her. I digress. The point being is Durpleton tries to be a good parent to others, because apparently he's 47, and they don't really they just drop that bombshell at some point later in the show. We're not going to go into it too much. It doesn't really matter, but it was funny to see the character be like, "Wait, what? He's 47? What?" And I think the most important probably the most important message of this entire show is found family. If you have an abusive family, a disinterested family, a family that has filled you with trauma, then that is not your family. That is not what love is. Love is someone who you can connect to on a deep level, who you care to talk to, who cares about you, your interests, your passions, the things that matter to you, and you in turn care about those things for that person. And I think, like, again, it's constantly back and forth with these gags that just don't fit, but Durpleton sees his parents towards the end of the show, I think the episode before the season finale, and he just tells his dad, "I know I have been a father now. I understand what it means to be a bad parent. I am a good dad and you were a terrible father." And that is the last time we see his parents. And I think, like, I was expecting them to try and, like, kind of, with their nonsense that this show is so prone to doing, making some gag happen, having them find a connection together and, like, reconnect. Because in the flashback with Durpleton, we see basically his parents like throw out the toy that Derpleton had made that it turns out to be a Jack-in-the-Box with a representation of his father that just says, "I love you, son," or something to that effect. His father throws that out of their carriage. Derpleton goes chasing after it. His mother's just like, "Let us know when you get back, or have a nice trip." And they just like abandon him in that carriage. They drive off. He's in the rain, just picking up the toy that he had made. And it's just like, it's such a it's a surprisingly powerful moment made with like the nonsense of gags that this show is prone to giving. But for a children's cartoon, the notion of just completely responding to parental trauma by like basically just disowning your parents, you don't see that often. And there are certainly shows that do it, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think is a good example. Zuko's relationship to his father, he certainly says, "I disagree with what you're doing, and I am going to do my own thing," that is in direct opposition to what you are choosing to do. And those moments are genuinely powerful. They are telling you that you do not have to give in to people who abuse you, even if you are bound to them by blood. That binding is superficial if it means it's going to cause you suffering. You have to leave behind the people who traumatize you, who hurt you, who don't care about you, because you waste too much thought and energy on them to keep them in your life. And I respect the show having the balls to do that. I genuinely do, because it's not something you see often. More shows tend to try and find a moment to reconnect, and I think that is something that's a valid option too. But sometimes the best option is to remove yourself from a situation that just causes you unnecessary harm. I digress. The point I'm trying to make is, like, again, this show has moments of character development and drama and writing that are good, and they are just surrounded in a glittery, rainbow-filled dumpster fireworks show. And it's so frustrating that there is genuine heart and character in this show, and it's just, I feel like the comedy takes away from it, or the attempts at comedy take away from it. And then let's talk about the main plot point that led to this war in the first place. This is like the true season finale spoiler. Okay, so in the first season, we're alluded to, there is this normal looking human in Centaur world. Presumably the assumption you make is that she is from the human side, the reality side of this setting, who likely got trapped in Centaur world, because we discover Horse's journey to collect the pieces of this relic that acts as a gate key between the two sides. It opens a rift to let them travel between sides. She seems potentially antagonistic to Horse. She does not want Horse to get these keys and open that rift, and we don't know why. We have no clue why, but we know that we get the sense that she is going to be some degree of antagonistic. And we find out that effectively what happened was she was, I'm going to assume, a princess or a queen, more likely princess, but a female ruling authority of reality side, of human reality side. And during her time, the rift, the connection between Centaur world and reality was just a given. It was just a thing. Humans and Centaur world had communicated and were like sharing trade and entertainment and interactions. And this princess loved to spend her time in Centaur world and kind of explore and learn about it. And we meet one of the technicians of this rift is an Elktar, whose name we're never outright given, I believe. But we'll talk about him more in a moment. But basically, it's a girl meets boy sort of situation, and clearly the boy is falling in love with her. Now we already get a sense that this Elktar has a sense of ennui, or not necessarily belonging. He feels like he doesn't really have connection with who he is as a centaur, and because he's falling in love with this girl, he wants to be human. And so what he does is he takes the gate key, the thing that activates the rifts and connects the world. He says, well, if this can connect our worlds, maybe it can take these parts of our world and separate them as well. And he does an experiment where he shoots this, he uses it to kind of create a machine that shoots a beam, and this beam can either fuse creatures together or separate them apart. And he proves through that experiment that he could, in theory, separate himself, man from elk. And he does it. He wants to be with this woman so bad that he wants to, he says, separate the beast from my body. Unfortunately, it goes the route of Soma, where his consciousness is split between both bodies, the human male body and just a straight elk. And so, of course, that elk is not the person that the princess falls in love with, because why would she fall in love with an elk when she has the obvious human that the person she was trying to generate gain feelings for is transformed into? And we'll call him, I guess I'll just call him the general, because it turns out he's the general that's leading the army against, or leading the human army against, in the war against the Minotaurs and their leader, which we'll talk about in a second, because oh my goodness, Kiwi, you would love this leader of the Minotaurs. But what I'm trying to say is basically the Elktar is split into man and elk, and the man gets to be with the princess, but the elk has to watch. And eventually we find out that the elk can talk, but he's never, for some reason, been able to approach the princess and talk to her. I think in part because the general is kind of manipulating things behind the scenes, trying to keep the elk away from her and keep her from finding out about this, because he doesn't want to share. Why would he want to share? This woman is who he loves, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, about what love in this relationship means. But ultimately, the general tries to kill the elk. He calls for a meeting with the elk because he understands the elk wants to be with this woman. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't the elk want to be with this woman? The elk is the general. They're both the same person, just split between two bodies, but their memories, their feelings, they're all the same. It's just the body is different. And so he tries to drown this elk in a lake, and he finds out that they are connected. If one dies, they both die. So he ultimately has the elk captured by his soldiers and imprisoned for 10 years. And of course the elk is going to be resentful of this and become angry and jaded and hate this other version of himself. And we see the birth of the Nowhere King, who is so cool. Like, you will love the design of this creature if you ever look at it. It's that I mean, if you watched my Neva playthrough, you know that it's got that like goopy black aesthetic, kind of like No Face from Spirited Away. This like black goopy sticky fluid substance pours from its body. It's a deer skull with antlers and multiple legs, and kind of like a wispy tail to it, kind of like a you probably won't have the reference, but the form of Giratina that isn't the big stumpy leg dragon form, the other form that I'm forgetting the name of. I digress. Really cool design. But basically what we find out is the elk eventually escapes from its prison. And because it feels alone, it doesn't have the person it loves, it doesn't have it doesn't have any place to belong. It ends up going back into that rift. There's this white area that kind of separates the two worlds in between the portals of the rift. So it's basically like a third dimension that just connects the two worlds. He goes in there and he starts fusing humans together with creatures to create minotaurs, because he figured, if I don't have a place to belong, I'll create a place for myself. I will create people who want me, who love me, who make me feel like I belong. And every time he uses this gate key to kind of create these creatures, his body becomes more and more corroded and corrupted. The black goo starts to forming from this elk body, and he just becomes increasingly more the form of what you see him become as the Nowhere King. I should also mention the theme song for the Nowhere King is kind of this like hushed lullaby, and it's so cool and ominous, and I really, really like it. And I don't know, the point I want to make here is that you can understand why our main antagonist became the way he was, and you kind of sympathize with him, because it wasn't, I mean, it was his fault, but it was also just a result of, well, being betrayed by himself almost. Like, there were things that were outside of his control. His consciousness was split, and now he's fighting against himself. And ultimately, what happens is a war starts between the general leading his people army against the Minotaurs and the Nowhere King. And the princess gets caught up in it because she finds out about the truth. She finds out, well, the whole reason this is happening is because you imprisoned him for 10 years. Yeah, it's your fault. And she basically kind of gets into an argument with the general. Ultimately, what happens, though, is they start fighting, and the princess, as we know, the relic kind of gets split apart. Most of the pieces end up in Centaur world, and so does the princess gets locked there as well. And as a result, that's kind of where she's trapped. And as far as all parties are concerned, the princess is trapped on one side, the general is trapped on the human side, and the Nowhere King is actually trapped in the middle. So both sides of the world are safe, except for the fact that, well, the humanity is just ridden with minotaurs that are fighting the people and killing the people. And basically, because of the machinations of our main characters, these worlds get reconnected, and we get to find out the story. And what I will say is the payoff for this story feels genuine. The princess ends up killing the Nowhere King, and it's just like she has a moment of, let me see you as you were when we first met. And she uses the gate key to kind of fuse them together to say goodbye before she finally kills him. And it's a fade to black, so you don't actually see the death. And of course they're going to do that because it is a cartoon for kids, I presume, so they don't want to actively show death. They do, but they do, as far as I can tell, actually kill him. And it's surprising, again, because this show, when it does its drama, does not pull its punches. Except for one instance, which I was a little disappointed about. I'm okay with it because they did have the commitment to letting the Nowhere King die, because at the end of the day, he committed atrocities. He killed thousands of humans, and likely Centaurs as well, since we kind of see that the war did, at least at some point, affect Centaur world as well. But I don't know, it's like, the thing I'm alluding to as far as what I was a little disappointed about was when Ryder finally confronts the Nowhere King, she has an opportunity to basically kill him, or at least likely cause significant damage, and the general sneaks up behind her and stabs her through the back. And it very much felt like Ryder was going to die, and the songs that were sung around that notion were quite good, honestly. The reveal that Ryder is not dead, it felt just kind of like immediately it was that way, and I feel like there could have been a little bit of a better payoff for that. But I'm willing to I would have honestly liked to see what happened if they let Ryder die there. But their commitment to letting the Nowhere King die at the hands of the person he loved and did what he did, it was an interesting choice. And I most of all, I appreciate the message of, this is not what love looks like. When Ryder is laying in the ground, on the ground dying, and Horse is by her side crying because she knows she's losing her friend, we see the general confront the Nowhere King, and the princess arrives on the back of Becky Apples. And we'll talk about Becky Apples as kind of our final thought on this, I guess, but because she was actually a joke that landed for me. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is, when the general confronts the Nowhere King, and then the princess ends up showing up to the scene, and the general addresses her, and he's like, I didn't know if you were alive. I've been fighting this war for so long just to say I love you, just so I could tell you once again that I love you. And the princess just looks at him like not sure what to do with that, and Horse just shouts out, "This is not what love looks like," and she points to a battlefield strewn with bodies. It is a powerful moment in that aspect too, and I don't know what to make of this series. Half of the show I did not care for, and the other half, like, in the moments when it tries to be more mature, I just can't. It confounds me. It's just, I don't know how to process this, and then this is what this video is for. It's me processing what I can, I guess. But I guess two jokes that I will say stuck for me, and this will be my closing remark. Becky Apples. Basically, she is the apparent horse of the deceased Baker Gary. Becky Apples is a fucking demon on the battlefield. She just shows up randomly, has no interest. Basically, Ryder ends up using Becky Apples temporarily in reality, while Horses on the Centaur world side kind of rallying forces to fight against the Minotaurs. Becky Apples helps Ryder infiltrate an entire stronghold and just wipes out enemies off screen left and right. She goes rogue. She leaves Ryder behind. Ryder's just like, okay, whatever, do your own thing. And every now and again, she's just sliding out of the shadows, doing like this blank, cold stare. And okay, that was funny. Like there's a scene where you just see a Minotaur falling from a high surface, and you're like, well, what the heck was that about? And then you just see Becky looming out of the shadows and then sliding backwards into out of view. I don't know. It was weird. It was funny. I enjoyed it. And then Ryder's like, I have no idea where Becky is. I'm just gonna go back to camp. And then Becky's just in her stall, just hanging out. It's fine. It's fine. And the general acts like he knows Becky is a threat. You don't mess with Becky. And then he goes up to her collar and is like, all right, so how many did you kill today? I'm gonna guess 6. And he just like marked a tally on her collar, and he's like, but we both know it was way more than 6, don't we? Like he's baby talking to her, and it's very silly. Until you know what the general is about, he is kind of an endearing character, honestly. And then the final joke. I mentioned before that Comfortable Doug was a running gag that just like got very badly overused, but to their credit, they actually used him very well in the credits, actually. So you know how shows are. The season, the finale, the end title screen rolls and credits roll, right? Well, what they did was they had Comfortable Doug just start rambling during the credits, like saying nonsense overall. And he's just like, he's just in his nonchalant, monotone, poorly done German accent. So it appalls me to find out that not many of you watch the credits, but I bet you're watching them right now, aren't you? And I'm like, okay, you know what? That was probably the most genuine laugh I had through the entire series. So credit where credit is due, they got me to have a genuine laugh by the end of this. That said, though, I think that's kind of being my closing thoughts. Do I recommend Centaur World? I don't know. I feel like if you're looking for something cheery and colorful and probably more catered to the younger audiences, go for it. If you're like interested, maybe watch some compilation videos of the jokes and see if they appeal to you. And if you just want to kind of get the important episodes, like the episodes where the drama matters, again, I genuinely feel like as a standalone episode, the season finale of the second season could honestly be a standalone episode. You'll lack context, but where you lack context, you still can understand character motivations and the drama behind it. So, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I enjoyed my watch, but it's definitely not my favorite show. Its strengths are genuinely impressive, but its flaws are very palpable. Ultimately, I did enjoy what I got out of this show. Is it perfect? Far from it, no. But I enjoyed it for what it's worth, a net positive experience, just leaving a little bit to be desired in the center bits, the filling, if you will. With all that said, Kiwi, I hope you've enjoyed watching these 2 playthroughs, and if you're awake, I hope this is helping you fall asleep. If you're sleeping, I hope you're sleeping well. In the next one, hopefully we'll be starting to play with some mods. I've got some fun videos planned and some silly ideas ahead of us, so look forward to it. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.